Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited. Student Leadership University has prided itself on, almost the last 30 years of helping a generation to think, dream, and lead at the feet of Jesus. And one of the things that we've spent a lot of time focusing on is coming alongside those youth pastors and ministry practitioners who care about this generation. So many of you who have attended Youth Pastor Summit, or we've connected at another event, or we've connected just over a meal or something. And this last year, we were spending some time in prayer and really asking some big questions in an effort to challenge the process of how do we serve the servants of God. And we thought to ourselves, we should bring in another voice. We should bring in somebody who can help walk alongside people who are walking alongside this generation. So I'm incredibly excited on behalf of our entire team here to announce our very first scholar in residence. And when we came up with that idea, there was one name in my mind that just shot to the top of the list. And I didn't know if he would be willing to do it because he's a very busy individual and his time is incredibly valuable. But he's somebody who's had such a tremendous impact on my own life. He's taught Worldview at SLU 101 for nearly 20 years, and just a man of God that I look up to. And I've said this in my 20s, in my 30s, and now I'm saying it in my 40s. When I grow up, I want to be like him. And so I'm crazy excited that we get to announce that Dr. Bill Brown, and I'm not going to go through a lot of his resume right now and intro because we're going to get to know him today, but Dr. Bill Brown is going to serve as our scholar in residence. Now, before I bring him in, let me tell you what that means. It means three things. You're going to get to hear it from Dr. Brown if you're a ministry leader in one of three ways, or all three ways if you choose. One, we're going to have a monthly conversation in which we're answering, or he's answering, I'm just kind of help moderating, your questions. Particularly your questions as it relates to worldview and ethics and morality and culture. And so there's 1,001 questions on your front doorstep all the time that you've got to wrestle through. We've brought in a thought leader to help you. So that we're going to have those, and we're going to post those on our YouTube channel once a month. Number two, he's going to be writing an article. Again, that article will be written around topics or questions that you might have, and we're going to post that on our SLU Lead website once a month as well. And then he's going to be at every one of our Youth Pastor Summits this coming spring. Now, those don't kick off until late March, but he'll be at all our Youth Pastor Summits. And so I'm very excited that for the year 2024, Dr. Bill Brown has agreed to be our scholar in residence. And today, we're going to have an awesome conversation in which you just get to know your scholar in residence. And so, Dr. Brown, first of all, thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for caring about youth ministry practitioners, whether they be educators, youth pastors, volunteers, or whatever role that may take. But thank you for caring about those who care about this next generation.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you for calling me a scholar. And the opportunity, number one, to keep working with you is always a blessing. And we're both very, very busy. And so we kind of catch each other coming and going. I'll be at SLU. We'll go out and maybe get some dinner together and talk, but that's about it. But hopefully this will be more of an opportunity for you and I to work together. And knowing your heart for youth pastors and for youth, it's right smack dab in the middle of my own desire to see God change the next generation. And so it's an honor to serve with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, today I just want to make sure, and some people are going to watch this 2 or 3 months down the road. They're going to hear about this as we get closer to YPS maybe, and they jump on the YouTube channel and go, man, there's several conversations posted, but who is this? This is going to be an opportunity for people, whether they're jumping in at the beginning, halfway through, or even towards the end, to be able to get to know you a little bit. So I thought we'd just today have a conversation around you, just some questions. I know you well, and I the more I get to know you, the more I look up to you. And one of the things I love about you, Doc, is every time we talk, you always start with, hey, how is fill in the blank? And it's the last thing you prayed for me. I've been praying for this. Give me an update so I know how to pray better. So it's just been so evident and obvious that you have that, really the heart of Jesus when it comes to caring for others. And I think that combined with a whole body of experience, whether it's writing or teaching or speaking or whatever it is on worldview related issues, makes this an incredibly valuable resource. So let's start with this. Tell us a little bit about where you came from. What was your upbringing like?
Going way back.
Way back.
Way back. Okay. Well, I will begin everything by mentioning that I live in Western North Carolina right now. So everything I say is going to bring us up to here. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and spent my first almost decade there. And then we moved to Florida. My dad was starting an insurance agency down there with a few friends, and it actually became the largest agency in the Southeast over the years, which is pretty cool. But we moved to Florida, and I grew up in Florida. So Florida is really our home. Our families are still down there. Lynn's families are down there as well. And I went to high school there, and I played basketball on the basketball team. We had one of the largest high schools in the nation. And so we played all the big schools. And I was the second tallest guy on the team. Mike Shirley was a quarter inch taller than I was, and he was 6'2.5". So I guarded the shortest guy. I guarded my senior year was 6'6". And there's another fellow at Hillsborough. He was 6'11". And I spent a lot of time on the floor. But it was great. And I went from there to University of South Florida there in Tampa. And my dream was always to go into the space program. I loved mathematics and physics, and that's what I majored in there. And but in the process of all that, I came to Christ. And while I finished that degree, I was still motivated by wanting to do something with my new faith. So I decided in my scientific kind of mind, I wanted to know answers to all these questions that I never asked before about God, about Jesus Christ, about the Bible, history, and so on. So I wanted to go to a place where I could learn the scriptures. I wanted to know Greek. I wanted to know Hebrew. I wanted to know German and French, so you could read the originals and some of the best theologians, and the history and the philosophy and so on. So I went to Dallas and did that. I spent 7 years of tribulation at Dallas, and it was awesome.
You were at Dallas Theological Seminary, right?
Correct. I'm sorry. Yeah, correct. You're probably thinking Cowboys. No. But yeah, that was my early upbringing in all of that. And I mentioned in one of the earlier videos that we had done that while I was at Dallas, I was asked to be a youth pastor at this church, and it was about an hour from where we were living. And I wasn't quite sure what a youth pastor was, because I was raised in a liturgical church, and we didn't really do those kind of things. And the church had 3 young people in it, and I figured I wouldn't mess that up. But as I say in the video, I did, because in 2 months we'd grown to 2. And but God used that and just really enriched my heart with the idea of wanting to help mentor and equip young people. That's what my heart was saying at that time, and it was great. I spent 7 years there, and it was amazing. It was amazing.
Let me go back just a little bit. You wanted to be in the space program when you were in high school. What caused that? What was it? But when y'all moved to Florida and you had Kennedy Space Center here, and
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, because we moved there. I was in 3rd or 4th grade. Can't remember exactly. And whenever there was a launch over in Cape Canaveral, it's called Cape Canaveral, then Cape Kennedy, back to Cape Canaveral. We would all the kids would run out into the yard. The teachers would come with us, and we could see it all the way over the other side of Florida. You know how that works.
Yeah.
And then I'd watch it on TV and so on, and I was mesmerized by it. And I wanted somehow or some way to do something with that.
Right.
I was just overwhelmed by the universe, loved looking at the stars and figuring out the constellations and so on. And I wanted to do that. My first thought was I wanted to be a mission specialist and go into space. or working with JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, and sending out probes, and so on. Yeah, I was game to do any of that.
Yeah. When we relocated, our family moved out to the country a while back, and we didn't even know this when we bought the property. We just went, wow, we're out in the country, and we don't know what we're doing. I'm out there running around in Vans and a t-shirt, and still, and we got cows and chickens and everything. But one night, my daughter comes running in the house. It was dark outside. She comes running in the house, and she goes, the sky is orange. The sky is orange. And we running out in the backyard, and we were watching one of the SpaceX launches. At first I was like, oh my gosh, Jesus is coming back, or it's the Russians, one of the two. And but it's so in our backyard we can see all the SpaceX launches, and like you said, it is. I don't want to go into the space program, but as a layman who just looks from a distance, it's mesmerizing. And we got the calendar on our refrigerator. We go out and watch all of them. So it's quite a if you will, a benefit, if you will, for living in Florida. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about, okay, so if you went to Dallas Theological, you spent 7 years. That's a lot of time in an academic environment, and yet you then chose to stay in an academic environment after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought about pastoring, but realized coming from a liturgical background, pastoring was totally different, and so on. And I'd gotten so close to these kids. We had probably over 100 young people in this little town that would come regularly, and I just loved the opportunity to teach, to mentor, to disciple. And started working with college students as well. And I couldn't think of doing anything better. And of course, Lynn, I was married then. We got married a year before we went to Dallas. And we really loved ministering together like that. And we still do in our church here in North Carolina. So I thought, what could we do? And then one of the values of Dallas Seminary was that you got to try a lot of opportunities to see how your ministry works, and if you feel comfortable doing that. We went over to Poland. It was communists. Wow. And we went over, Lynn and I, and spent 2.5 months in Poland, and then we did some pastoral teaching, preaching, I should say. And then we did some inner city ministries, going into crack houses and sharing Christ. All of that. I loved all of that. But the thing I really enjoyed most was teaching. And they had what was called the Lay Institute. So I put together a class, and it got approved, and it was for lay people to come in. And I think there were 8 sessions, like on a Tuesday night or something. And I just absolutely fell in love with the teaching and the interaction with that. So that kind of pushed me into that direction before I graduated.
And then, I intersected with your career when I was a freshman at Bryan College. And so you were at a school called Bryan College for a long time, and then served at another school, and then after that really helped launch an incredible ministry, which we'll get to. But am I right that from a vocational standpoint, there's been these 3 roles that you've served in? Tell us a little bit about those.
Well, being a teacher at a university is a lot of fun, and you get to. It's not like being a K through 12 teacher where it's all day. I mean, those are the giants of the educational world. They're the ones.
You mean you don't have to do lunchroom duty and all that when you're
Exactly. And I loved teaching the college students, and from my first semester there, and you're probably aware of this, I had a group of guys that wanted me to mentor them, to disciple them. And 2 guys one guy had come up, next day another guy had come up. So I said, yeah, why don't you get together? Well, next thing you know, we had about 8 guys. And so we met every Friday for breakfast, and we were reading a book together and talking about life together and so on. And I was at Bryan for 19 years, and I had a group of guys. Sometimes it was mostly the same, but always new guys. I had a group every year, and I never asked anybody to join. I said, Lord, if you want me to, bring together. And sometimes we'd have like 6 or 7 guys. Several years we had a dozen guys, just like Jesus. And yeah, I learned so much, and I am still close with a lot of those guys. And what a blessing that was to be able to do that. But what often happens, I was asked to move into leadership as being the dean of the college, the academic vice president. I said no for about a year, and finally I relented if they'd let me teach three classes, and uh, and so they did, and so I did that, and I did that for 5 years, and then they told me you're really messing up, so we need to move you into being president. And
That's how leadership works right there.
yeah, it's the Peter principle at work. You're messing up here. No, things were going great. The university, the college was growing. And so they asked me to be president, and I served as president for 10 years at Bryant. And that's where you and I and others met, John Stone Street, and, the long list of great people.
And then from there, you became the president and then chancellor at Cedarville University in Ohio.
That's correct. They came and asked me, and I wasn't interested either. But God made it very clear it was time for us to go there. And so we did. Spent 10 really good years at that good school. It was a much larger school, very focused on professional studies, everything from not just ministry and liberal arts and so on, but social work, but also engineering. And I really focused on looking at healthcare because not only do we really need Christians in that field, but Christians in that field can get into other countries, particularly Muslim countries that other people can't. And so I did that, and yeah, and then stepped aside for a year and was chancellor, and then we moved down here to North Carolina.
And you helped relaunch. I don't know if you'd call it relaunch, Doc, or you really put it on the map and you gave it life and structure and vision, but this thing called the Colson Fellowship. So tell us, that's what you focused on the last several years. And in fact, yesterday, just side note, I was on the phone with a headmaster at a school, and she was telling me all about how she had just finished up her year or whatever, if it's 9 months or a year, but her stint as becoming a Colson Fellow. She was so proud that she was a Colson Fellow. She talked all about you and the impact of that. So what was the Colson Fellowship program? What is it? And I think it was like 5 people, and now it's sold out every year with like thousands. So tell me what that is.
Yeah, well, it was fascinating. It was something that Chuck Colson, one of my heroes, developed when he came to Christ before he went to prison after the Watergate fiasco. He realized that he wanted to have a ministry in prison, and so he started Prison Fellowship. And after being there for years and working with Prison Fellowship, he realized that most of the problems that are in our country that cause individuals, men and women, to go to prison is back upstream in culture. And so he said, we need to be working there as well. And so he started what was known as the Colson Center for Worldview and Culture. And then he wanted to go a little bit deeper with people. And so he said, I want to start a program. And he called it the Centurions. And he would get as many people as he could, usually around 100. And they would read a book a month. And then they would have a teleconference and talk about it. And they'd have some conferences where they'd all get together. And that was the Centurions. Well, Chuck passed away in 2012. And they tried to keep the program going, but they couldn't get people to come. And because Chuck wasn't there, I mean, the major reason people got involved was because they could spend time with Chuck. And so they discontinued the program, and they were going to shut down the Colson Center for Christian Worldview because, well, Chuck wasn't there. But Chuck had been mentoring and preparing a young man named John Stone Street, whom you know, who was also a Bryan College graduate. And
a heck of a point guard back in his day as well.
He was a point guard. Yeah, we talk about that. Our motto back in those days, well, we played, basketball. He was on the team, but then we played faculty basketball, which our motto was, we may not shoot well, but we're slow. And we had lots of opportunities to get to know each other that way. But John's done a great job in leading the Colson Center. But what he called me and he said, can you help me? We want to relaunch the Centurions, but it's got to be different. And I said, well, I don't want to do it the way Chuck did because it's kind of like a book club. And they did some other things, but I said, I'm in equipping, And I really think not only do you need the information, but you need to have the ability to do something with it and the opportunities as well. And he said, well, put something together. So I put together a curriculum which involves reading a book or so a month on culture, deep dives into spirituality, deep dives into worldview, what worldviews are, and how they influence culture and how culture influences worldviews. And then if you think of any issue in culture now, we would usually have some sessions on it and books on it that people read. And then I wrote devotionals that go throughout the period. It's 10 months. It starts in July and goes through May, kind of paralleling the academic year. And it's all online now, but everybody that's in the program, they meet face to face once a month. And so the first year we had 100. This is the seventh year. Second year we had about 100. This year we have, I think it's 1,600 in the program. And it's not just in the United States. It has gone over all over the world. It's in we have big groups in let's see, North Korea. Assume me, North Korea. I wish South Korea, and in India, and several large groups down in Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, and so on. It's just awesome.
And it's mostly not ministry leaders. These are people in education and business, and I mean they're marketplace leaders.
Yeah, one year we had 4 Air Force generals go through the program. And yeah, it's mature Christians who want to make a difference. And where do you go to get this kind of information? If you want to know what DEI is from a biblical perspective, where do you go? If you want to know LGBTQ issues, it's one thing to be able to argue with people like you're on Fox News or something, and I'll show you. Quite another thing to look at it from a biblical perspective, to care for those people, see them through the eyes of Jesus Christ, and help to speak truth to them. And then in many ways to get involved in really making a difference for Christ and the needs that are around you. And it's just really exploded, I think, because it's meeting a need. And it's interesting, Brent. We at the beginning, when we had rebooted the program, we could not get pastors interested in the program.
Wow.
He said, we don't need that. But what was happening is we began to grow. We got to 200, then we got to 300, and 500, and so on. And all these people, mature Christians, and started going to their pastors in their churches and saying, this program is awesome. And so now we have what's called church affiliates. And of the 1,600, I think 700 and some of them are part of a church. Like a church has a group, our own church has a group of 11 people, a pastor being one of them, going to the program. And they meet once a month together. And of course, everything's online and they can interact with each other regularly. And so, in fact, Lynn is one of the leaders of that. Lynn's been to the program, and it's really neat.
Well, and it's also pretty cool that once you go through it, you're a fellow for life.
You're a fellow for life.
Yeah, you literally have. It's something that can go on your resume. It's something you're part of a community, a cohort of people who have done this, and it's pretty cool. That's a big tribe that you've helped.
Yeah, and that was a part of the thing that I thought was important. You go through the program, you can't just say, well, it was so good having you here. See you later. We'll send you fundraising letters every now and then. But no, once a Colson Fellow, always a Colson Fellow, and all the resources we have are available, because we want to equip you from now on. As culture changes, we are going to be updating our information and the people that we talk to. And I do webinars, 2 or 3 webinars a month. In fact, I was just on the phone with Oz Guinness, and we're setting things up. We're going to talk about the meaning in life next month. People like that, and Elisa Childers and Carl Truman, people that are really speaking into culture from a Christ-centered perspective.
Right.
And they'll get the Colson Fellows will get to listen to our interview and ask questions, and that's gold for a lot of people. It's really motivating and keeps them going.
Yeah. Well, that's a good place to transition. I want to ask you it's a big question, but why, as you look back on the landscape of your career, and why such an emphasis on worldview and culture? Why is that so important?
Well, I think what's happening is that we have because of technology and communication technology and now social media and so on, the world is much, much smaller. And not just because we can now talk to people in Ukraine and in China and in Venezuela and so on, but the ideas that come from our country among all these people are coming as well. And all you have to do is spend, 15 minutes on TikTok and you're going to see, holy cow, all these people are buying into these kinds of information sessions, and a lot of our kids are buying into it. And for them, that's truth. And so, what do we need to do is to help people with a context that they can understand what's being said. And that's what worldviews do. Worldviews allow you to listen to something and know, well, the reason they're saying this is because they have this kind of a worldview. And a worldview is just like it's just like some cabinets where you put your most important beliefs, like where did everything come from? Why are we here? And then who decides what's right and wrong? And then what happens when and after we die? And just answering those four questions and putting them in that's a worldview. And there are three major worldviews, as we'll talk about uh, as we go along in the program. And you'll be able to notice a Hindu, well, that's a transcendental worldview. Atheist, that's a naturalistic worldview. Christian and Judaism and Islam, those are theistic worldviews. What are the difference among those worldviews as well? And all thinking Christians, particularly young ones, need to be able to do that. It's not that difficult, but worldviews allow us to be able to do that in a way that honors both what people believe, but at the same time can give a Christ-centered perspective in our interactions.
Well, speaking of worldview and culture, and I know over the next 12 months we're going to be wrestling with some big topics and answering some big questions once a month. But let me just ask you this: as you look across the landscape of culture now, what concerns you?
I think what concerns me the most is what we just talked about a little bit, was the way both the internet and social media have dominated our source of information. It's what disciples most kids.
Yeah.
And because young people they're asking those three major questions, and if you're a youth pastor, you know these three, and that's simply the first question being, here I am drawing a blank. The first question being identity, and the second question being meaning, and the third one being community. Those are the things that young people are searching for. Who am I? What am I? And then what is my life? Why am I here? Is there any meaning in my life? You go through that existential, why am I here question. And lastly, then who do I belong with? What group do I find my adherence of friendship and so on belonging to? And as you sort through all of these things, there aren't many people giving them much help to think through that.
Right.
And it's so difficult for them because, mom and dad will say one thing. Of course, it's always been that way, but your friends will say other things, but it's more than just your friends. It's this person that you met on IG, and those Instagram messages and so on. They're so cool. I want to be like that. And so you've already answered those three questions by saying that and doing that, and you can set the trajectory of your life in a very bad direction. And your parents and the people around you don't even know it.
I don't even think, and I don't want to sound like, back in this day, but 30 years ago, I don't even think we could have imagined that the three most important questions in life, questions revolving around identity, meaning, and community, would have been hijacked by 30 and 60-second sound bites. That would have been such a foreign concept. But that's what you're describing, is that the most important questions that a human being can and should wrestle with are being answered in little sound bites from people all over the world, coming from a variety of different worldviews and perspectives. And so, yeah, I can't wait for us to dive into some of that more as we go along. Well, what encourages you right now? I mean, obviously I think sometimes it's easier to answer the question of, yeah, here's some things that are bad. That sticks out like a sore thumb, but what encourages you right now as you look across the landscape, especially this generation and students who love Jesus and those who are ministering to them? What's encouraging?
Well, I think that what encourages me are people like you,
Mm.
people like the ministry that you and Jay have had for all these years, making a difference, giving an alternative in a way that matters to young people. And the youth pastors that are out there right now, they don't realize they and their parents are on the front line of what these young people are going to become.
Mhm.
Uh, and we know that you will not become anything that you don't decide to become. And unless somebody's speaking into their lives and modeling for them, they're not gonna do it. Maybe later when they get, but I think that's what is important. I think in going on, and I think there's this new robustness about being a youth pastor as a mentor that is number one, very, very encouraging for me. That's why when you contacted me about this a couple months ago, I thought this is awesome. This is awesome because when I come to SLU and talk on worldviews, the favorite thing I get to do is talk, walk around and talk to the students,
Right.
and then to talk to the youth pastors as well. And rarely have I met one that says, "Oh man, this is terrible." It's not, but they're struggling, but at the same time, they realize what they're doing is saving lives.
Right.
What they're doing is the Lord's work. And I think that is the biggest encouragement for me. And too, that I hear from so many different people that God is doing some amazing things in a lot of churches, and nobody hears about it. We even see it in our church. Young couples have shown up at our church with lots of kids. And I remember just about a year and a half ago where the pastor would say, okay, all the children, you can go to the children's church or whatever they call it. I can't remember. And both of the kids would go out.
Yeah.
Now there's over 50 kids that go out. And I was talking to the pastor, and we can't figure out what we've done for this to happen. We need to get a program so we can say, look, the program is working. But but by and large, these young people they're professional, they're godly, they have a hunger, and they're involved. And it's not just ours. There's a lot of places that's happening, and I love that it's under the radar.
Yes, sir.
So it's not a big deal before CT gets a hold of it. It makes it a front page article.
Yeah.
But
Well, you said you're saving lives when you're talking about youth ministry practitioners. Dr. Bill Bright, before he passed away, and I share this with some of our students and our youth pastors as well, that I was privileged to get to know him a little bit. He was a close friend of Dr. Jay Strack, and Jay was gracious enough to share that relationship. And I asked him some questions one day, and he said something to me that he said to tens of thousands of other people, I'm sure, but he actually wrote it down for me and gave it to me, and I've kept it to this day. But he said the most important thing about you is your view of God, and the most freeing thing about you is obedience to that view. And so I'll oftentimes say to our youth pastors, for everything that you got to put up with, what you're doing at the end of the day is you're helping shape somebody's view of God, and that will in turn determine everything about them.
so good.
And
So good.
yes,
Yeah.
sir. Well, let's peek behind the curtain, if you will. I'm going to ask you some lighter questions and get to know you a little bit. And so I'm going to go from those big kind of meta type questions to some almost, they're really important to strange, weird people like myself who are curious. So let's start with this. Best movie. What's your favorite movie? Do you got a top movie that you...
Movie? Oh gosh, just one?
Well, you could pick something from your top five. How about that?
All right. Well, let me think. You know what I did when I work out a lot, as you can tell, and one of the things I did for these years, it was treadmill, lifting weights, kind of stuff, so I could watch movies. And so I made it my goal to watch all the top 100 movies of American Film Institutes.
Okay.
And that was fascinating. Some of them were garbage, but most of them were just something. So that was really good. And if I were to say this is the movie that I would say is my favorite, um, this sounds weird, but it's actually The Seven Samurai by
I don't think I've seen that one.
Akira Kurosawa. Yeah, it's a Japanese movie.
Okay. No, then I definitely haven't seen it.
It's long, 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 but it is quintessential, and it's a black and white film. And I saw it. I ended up watching all of Akira Kurosawa's movies,
Mm.
Japanese. But this is where, if you remember the movie Magnificent Seven, the Western.
Oh yeah.
That's where it comes from. It's just a Western view of that movie, The Seven Samurai. So I
Wow.
would say that. But if you were to push me and say, okay, the young people are not going to go see The
Mm.
Seven Samurai, even look it up, which is a shame. I got to go with everything, like seeing Star Wars for the very first time. I was my first year in Dallas Seminary, and my brother-in-law said, "You got to go see this movie. The place was packed. And what is this?" And I like space, obviously,
Yeah.
and the science fiction, and it just blew me out of the water. So I just remember that moment of seeing that movie.
You got to see the original Star Wars when it came out in theaters.
Yes, that the week it came out, the
Gee,
end of May.
that's an amazing cinema
And it
moment.
was, yeah, that. And then, of course, the Indiana Jones
Hmm.
film, the first one was, we went with some dear friends of ours, and I just remember that so vividly. So I tucked those in there as well.
And I loved Indiana Jones until the aliens came along. I was with him until the aliens, and then
Oh
I'm
no,
struggling
right.
after the
I know, I know.
aliens. So yeah, I walked out of that. I walked out of the theater after that one and went, it's just not the same.
They tried too hard. One step too far.
Yeah, at least we had the first three. All right. So what's your favorite hobby?
My favorite hobby. Lynn and I like to hike a lot,
Mm.
and Lynn and I have been blessed to be in like 30 different countries.
Wow.
And we always like to hike wherever we are,
Hmm.
and the Alps, and different places like that. In fact, we were hiking. We were in France, and we started. I spoke to a mission organization there, and we went hiking. And it was in the Parc des Pilotes, it was called. It was just really beautiful. And so I said, "What does Parc des Pilotes mean?" And they said, "Well, this is the park of Pontius Pilate. After he left Jerusalem, he came here, and this was all his property. And
Wow.
now it's been reclaimed." And so I'm thinking, you're kidding me, So, but yeah, we've been in everything over to Sangre de Cristo Mountains in New Mexico to, of course, here in Western North Carolina. Those kind of things. That's probably my favorite thing. That and playing guitar while
Okay.
I hike. No, not while I hike.
While you hike, yeah, the hiking scholar who plays guitar and
Alderine.
sings to nature. Yeah, yeah. I tell you, I got a chance to take my 16-year-old daughter to New Zealand recently, and we did a lot of hiking and among other things. And I thought to myself, this like I enjoy hiking, but I live in Florida, so there's water involved whenever you go somewhere in Florida. So we usually take a boat with us, but if I lived in New Zealand, I mean, you could just hike your entire life and never hike the same place twice. It's just quite an amazing thing. So, this next question I think really defines a person. What's your favorite candy?
Favorite what?
Candy.
Candy? I don't know if you know this about me,
Okay.
but I don't like sweets.
Mm.
I did not grow up eating sweets,
Mm.
and rarely had dessert. And then my wife is just the opposite. She loves dark chocolate and everything like that. So I keep her stocked in dark chocolate. But I don't eat candy.
Wow.
And rarely do I eat anything. Now, if we have dessert, if we're in Europe, of course, you can get fruit and cheese for dessert. That's a big
Oh,
dessert,
I love that. Yeah.
and that's my favorite, if I would say that. Or nuts. I really like nuts. So, in fact, Lynn stuffs my stocking at Christmas with all kinds of cashews, pecans, and so on. So
What then? Okay, what would be like? Okay, if you're one meal, you go, this is it. Is it steak? Is it surf and turf? Is it seafood? Is it Mexican? What is it?
well, you probably know that.
Yeah, there's a little spot you and I like to go to once a year, and there's a particular steak that they have that's woof.
That's, in fact, when I go down to SLU and come back, Lynn's first question is, "What did you and Brent go to?"
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I look forward to that one every year. Well, let's end our conversation with this question. And I have a son graduating from high school this year, so this is I normally ask this question of people of influence because I think it's real thinkers have really good answers typically to a question like this. But as I'm sitting here watching my own son about to graduate, it's of even bigger relevance to me. And that is, if you had a child graduating from high school, they, coming up at, let's say in May, they're going to walk across that stage in 2024. What would be the one piece of advice you would give them?
Wow, it's a big one. I'd probably go back to something I said earlier, and that would be to remind them that they're going to become whatever they choose to become. And so to ask them, because most young people don't think like that down the line, they think about today, what kind of person do you want to become? Because you're going to be affirming or denying that every day when you decide.
Right.
And then how are you going to be accountable for that? I'm your father, so how can you be accountable? What are you going to be doing? And who are you going to be talking to? Who are you going to be spending time with, and so on? And then I think that's a good thing to keep in front of their minds, not just then, but along the way. Because, with young people, it's like we think that just because we said something, we've done something.
Right.
Particularly with young people. That's Christians do that all the time. But it's following up on all those things. They heard it, that's really great. I love hearing that. And then they do something stupid, 10 minutes later. But then there can be you can reel that back, but at the same time, we just want them to know every day. The Alcoholics Anonymous has a tremendous perspective of life where, this, that every day is what matters. You never promise that you will never drink again, only that you will not drink today.
Today, yeah.
And you decide today the kind of person you're going to be.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, same thing. And just being aware that you are going to be tempted a lot in college and so on. And let's keep accountable to all of that.
Good stuff, Doc. Good stuff. Well, Doc, I'm incredibly excited about the conversations to come, the articles that are going to be accessible, and then the interaction that we're going to have at YPS in the spring, which we'll talk a little bit more about when we get closer to time. But ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who have been tuning in to this conversation, let me encourage you, if you have a topic that you would like Dr. Brown to address in the coming months, go ahead and leave that in the comments below. And know that we're going to be bringing you conversations once a month. Those conversations are going to be crafted around the question you are going to be asking, particularly as it pertains to worldview, culture, ethics, things of that nature. And it's just that we're just kicking off today. We just wanted to do an introduction. I wanted you to get a chance to meet Dr. Brown, to be excited about the conversations to come, and to be grateful for the resource that is Dr. Brown, and that we get to tap into that incredible mind all year long. So thank you for tuning in today. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Until we meet again, wander well and shine like stars.